told you to leave. If you didn't want your marriage, leave.
How did you buy this house?
If you don't want to be with me, leave.
How?
Because you wasn't on the loan. What do you mean?
I didn't have to be on the loan to be on the deed. So why am I not on this house? Why? You didn't know when you were sitting there
as a signing? What's the big deal?
No, you made it clear to me that it's
not
not
your house.
No, you made it clear to me that it's not.
I don't give a fuck about this house. I'm about to move out. I don't care about this house. I told you. I said,
if I'm your friend,
you're not together, if you're not married, this house ain't shit. You think I want this fucking house?
I was your friend.
This is very clear evidence of judicial misconduct. My judge has been changed for this matter 6 times. The first judge was Kathy Hardcastle, the second one, Judge Raina Hughes, who fabricated her order, and then the 5th one, Gerald Hardcastle, the husband of Kathy Hardcastle, who tried to label me vexuous and close out my matter to protect his wife. This is lease pendens I filed after catching my attorneys committing legal malpractice and them dropping off of my cases. I immediately filed for lease pendens into the matter filed by my counsel into the incorrect court with the judge that they picked by theirself. This lease pendens was filed 8/3/2020, 2 days prior to Raina Hughes fabricating her divorce decree. Therefore, it was not her jurisdiction. Once I filed into these matters, everything I filed was ignored. There was never a hearing, she ruled in chambers, and lease pendens was never heard in this matter. Here is the first page of the final decree of divorce, entered 8/5/2020 by Raina Hughes, the second judge on this matter who concealed evidence, held a trial with no jury, and fabricated her order. After filing into both cases filed by Jennings and Fulton, I then filed my own case, knowing that the 2 current courts were the incorrect court and both judges were not following the law. I then filed a separate case to quiet the title and again filed lease pendens into this matter. This matter was originally assigned to Judge Rob Baer, who never heard anything on this matter. You can see here that Nikki Secaucus spot was served, Bobby Ante, Linda Na, the police department was on this lawsuit, as well as Shumway Van. Therefore, Shumway Van should not have continued the representation of Bobby Ante and Linda Na once they were served with this lawsuit. Yet, still today, they represent both clients and themselves. The case was then changed to David Jones, who heard absolutely nothing in this matter, started awarding fees to the notaries who forged my name, and never heard lease pendens. I filed it multiple times into this case. Here you can see lease pendens was properly served to all parties, including the police department, Shumway Van, Linda Na, Grayson Moulton, Bobby Ante, the title company, and Nikki Bott. All parties were very clear that I was filing to take possession of my home. Months went by and my filing for lease pendens was never heard, even though it was served on all parties. Meanwhile, Nevada Supreme Court refused to hear anything on my appeal in the divorce matter and allowed this abuse to continue in other matters with the same attorneys while no one represented me or protected me as a victim of a crime. They began to mock the death of my son, damage my character, and started sitting outside my home. When I filed in an appeal after my case was immediately dismissed once I filed into it against the notary, I then filed to amend that case. Here you will see on the top in the appeal, all parties named when I amended the case. Therefore, Bobby Ante and Shumway Van were all included in this order, yet they continued their representation, even though the Supreme Court had very clear evidence of the conflict of interest and the fraud that was occurring. When all of my reports were ignored by Aaron Ford, and as well as the District Court and Supreme Court, I then filed a federal lawsuit against Raina Hughes, the Supreme Court, Aaron Ford, the police department, for not acting and allowing the abuse to continue. The civil rights case was immediately dismissed by Gloria Navarro, the same judge that had a civil rights case for Raina Hughes the previous year. Gloria Navarro also dismissed that matter when Raina Hughes threatened to jail a child. After all my reports to Aaron Ford were simply ignored and the abuse worsened, I knew it was time for me to leave Nevada because my life was now in danger. After Aaron Ford ignored all complaints, I knew my life was now in danger. People were sitting outside of my house. Nobody was no longer following the law or any rules. I was being harassed and stalked by Shumway Van, Linda Na, and Bobby Ante, and Aaron Ford refused to act. I was forced to close my office, leave my home, and drive across the United States, where I stopped in Georgia. In Georgia, I then filed civil rights in hopes that the judges would be honest and they would stop the illegal sale of my home. Yet, this complaint was also dismissed with no hearing, and they never heard the lease pendens filed. After filing for civil rights in Georgia in hopes that the courts would be honest and protect me as a victim of a crime, I flew back to Nevada and filed lease pendens in the county recorder's office, doing everything in my power to protect my home and protect myself from the state of Nevada. On October 4th, I then filed for lease pendens. I requested a hearing and made sure that this was served to every party in this matter. My lease pendens was never heard. Here you will see that Judge David Jones and Shumway Van Law Firm were served with the civil rights complaint in November of 2021. Therefore, again, should have recused and chose not to. David Jones knowingly waived his immunity. Garrett Chase and Bobby Ante were also served with the complaint, yet neither one of them responded to the complaint, and it was then dismissed with no hearing and no appearance. I also served Bobby Ante's mother, who has conspired to conceal a crime with her son, has allowed him to live in her home for 5 years free while he attacked me, and has now concealed the fraud he committed. I then also served the State Bar of Nevada, who ignored the legal malpractice of Shumway Van, Chris Tillman, and Jennings and Fulton, and refused to provide me with legal counsel even though I had proven I was a victim of a crime. On the left, you will see proof of service to the Georgia civil rights case to Michael Van. Michael Van was also served in multiple other cases in Nevada in which they were dismissed with no hearing. Michael Van continues to utter a forged deed to be true and has requested the lift of the lease pendens without a hearing and without due process, knowing he's telling his clients to commit fraud. Shumway Van Law Firm should be shut down, and Michael Van should lose his license for the abuse that I have suffered now for 4 years at the hands of his employees and his multiple clients. On the right, you can see as a defendant on the case that I filed lease pendens to, he then requested to lift the lease pendens as Bobby's representation, in which David Jones allowed this legal malpractice. Also notice on the case on the left, filed in September of 2020, it was also listed the Las Vegas Police Department, who ignored several reports of forgery and fraud and allowed the abuse to continue. They got every filing into this matter and were clearly aware of the legal malpractice, the judicial misconduct, and the fraud and forgery, yet took absolutely no action and allowed the defendants to file joinders so that they wouldn't have to get counsel to dismiss the matter. After being served with multiple civil rights lawsuits, Judge David Jones, still holding no hearing, released the lease pendens and allowed Bobby Ante and Shumway Van to illegally sell my home and interfered with interstate commerce, which knowingly waived his immunity because these are not judicial acts. Judge David Jones allowed Bobby Ante to steal my home, and now all proceeds are going to him and Shumway Van and Linda Na, who have openly committed legal malpractice. They have even lifted the lease pendens in Georgia, even though that matter was not in their court. On the left, you will see my filing to the Supreme Court. I filed my appeal in August of 2020. I filed over 30 motions into my appeal, in which every single one was ignored. Nevada Supreme Court never held any oral hearing. They did not address any of the legal malpractice or the judicial misconduct, and then illegally lifted the stay to allow Bobby to regain possession of my home, even after I filed an opposition and gave them very clear evidence multiple times over the last 2 years of the legal malpractice and misconduct. Yet every Nevada Supreme Court justice refused to follow the law, uphold the Constitution, and allowed the attacks on the victim to continue and the theft of my home. In the multiple filings made to the Nevada Supreme Court requesting that my home be transferred back into my name. I also provided them with adequate evidence that the home could be financed solely on my own and that there was no need to sell the home. Once I provided this information to Nevada Supreme Court, they immediately gave Bobby possession, allowed him to sell the home, even though he never lived in it, never paid for it, and committed fraud to obtain it. You can clearly see here that Michael Van and Garrett Chase work for Shumway Van. On this complaint, you can clearly see Shumway Van is one of the defendants, as well as Nikki Bott, Bobby Ante, and Linda Na. Therefore, their simple representation of both Linda Na and Bobby Ante in this motion is fraud. So David Jones allowing them to illegally lift the stays and the lease pendens was fraud, and he should be arrested for his crimes, along with Shumway Van, and their law firm should be shut down. You can see here that David Jones lifted the lease pendants in Georgia, even though there was never a hearing in Georgia or due process. He also lifted both lease pendants in Nevada without due process, and then awarded the defendants legal fees in retaliation for me serving him and requesting justice. All 26 Nevada judges, 2 Georgia judges, the Nevada Attorney General's Office, the Las Vegas Police Department, Nevada Secretary of State, Galvar, Nevada Real Estate Division, the FBI, the Department of Justice have all received this very clear evidence of notary fraud. Nikki Secaucus Bott acted as the notary, which you can see from the Secretary of State acknowledging the complaint. She did not turn in her journal, and she was also the escrow agent who collected commission. Therefore, this was all very clear evidence to the police department, Aaron Ford, the Secretary of State, to take action, and instead they chose to protect her broker, Tracy Bouchard. At the closing, there were 2 separate notaries. There was Melanie Traynor, who notarized Bobby's deed of sale, and then Nikki Secaucus Bott, the escrow agent who forged my deed of sale. You can also see here when I filed for both bond payments that they're next door neighbors. This was also very clear evidence to Attorney General and the police department that fraud had been occurred. Yet no action has been taken, and this lady has been permitted to make fake pages, stalk, slander, and abuse me, and then was awarded $10,000 for her crimes. This is the deed of sale signed by Bobby and notarized by Nikki Secaucus Bott's neighbor, Melanie Traynor. You can see here that Bobby Ante said he didn't know I wasn't on the title. But on the first page, it says, to Bobby Ante, a married man as his sole and separate property. So Bobby was very aware that he was fraudulently accepting conveyance of the title, and Melanie Traynor was very aware that she was fraudulently conveying title into Bobby's name and that her neighbor, Nikki Bott, was going to forge my name since I did not show up to the closing. This is the forged deed of sale. Nikki Secaucus was the notary, and she was also the escrow agent. Therefore, this was enough evidence for Las Vegas Police Department to know that I did not sign this and that fraud had been committed against me. Yet, they took no action. On the right, you can see email from my attorney, Adam Fulton. He clearly admits to litigating all 3 cases, which is clear legal malpractice. He had a retainer for only 1 case, the Linda Na case, but still also litigated the family court case as well as the National Title Company case, but assessed none of my damages, filed them all in the wrong courts, and then threw me to the dogs when they were done using me and stealing all my money. While the Supreme Court had my divorce appeal for 2 years and every case I was filing into was being dismissed and all my rights were being violated, they then illegally tried to list my house without lifting the lease pendants, being that they never held any juries, any trials, or any hearings after I caught Raina Hughes. My house was listed without my knowledge, and I only was made aware of it but when I was contacted by an escrow agent trying to close on the loan. She clearly states in her email that none of the lease pendants were heard, in which I responded to her letting her know that I did not get due process or approve my house to be on the market. She immediately took the house off the market, and Bobby Ante's lawyers went back into court and released the lease pendants illegally to then again sell the house. My house is now currently in escrow again without any hearings or lease pendants being heard in any court in the United States. They have allowed the legal malpractice, and once my house is sold, all proceeds will go to the attorneys who have committed crimes since 2018. Please help me stop the abuse of power and ensure that Shumway Van Law Firm is shut down and that Bobby Ante and Linda Na are put in prison where they belong. For 4 years, the only people who have been protected were the people who committed the crimes. Aaron Ford and the police sheriff have protected Bobby Ante, Linda Na, Nikki Bott in order to protect these two brokers, Jeff Moore and Tracy Bouchard. Each one should be liable for the damages that their employees caused, but instead they have used their political connections, aided Attorney General in his election, and have encouraged the police department to take no action and have allowed the abuse and attacks on me and my family to continue now for 4 years. Aaron Ford is taking no action to stop any of these people from abusing me. And I'm asking you guys to stand with me and ensure that Aaron Ford is removed from office and that an honest Attorney General comes into office and gives me justice.